Listen to the free Alaska's News Source podcast. You'll hear about in-depth investigations, special reports, and statewide forecasts. To have episodes download automatically, subscribe today wherever you get your podcasts.
Everywhere I go.
H&I has got iconic characters and edge-of-your-seat action that will take you out of this world.
Hard to believe a place this beautiful exists.
Catch the action on Channel 2.2.
Look inside any house and you'll find poison risks hidden in plain sight. More than 90% of poisonings happen at home, but there are things you can do to keep your family safe. Visit the Poison Help website or call 1-800-222-1222, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
At Donors Choose, we want students and teachers to have the tools they need for a great education. And now, more than ever, they need your support. Learn more at donorschoose.org.
Tonight on Alaska's News Source, gas prices are soaring again. We dig in to see what's pushing up the price at the pump so high.
This helping Western Alaskan storm victims rebuild, how local foundations getting those impacted what they need to move forward.
And another round of high winds and flooding is on the way for Western Alaska, while South Central prepares for a temperature roller coaster. I'll let you know what to prepare for.
And millions of doses of fentanyl and other illegal drugs seized here in Alaska.
You're watching Alaska's News Source.
Good evening, everyone. We've all been through this lately. If you have filled up your gas tank recently, you know that prices are way up seemingly overnight.
The rise and fall of those prices is often a mystery. What's driving it this time around? Well, Lauren Maxwell has been looking into what's recently making those prices at the pump go so high.
Call it sticker shock.
It scares me just to go by a gas station anymore.
And in recent days, Alaskans have seen plenty of it.
It's definitely not a good situation, especially when you're driving a big truck, you know?
It's all coming after record high gas prices this summer, which oil and gas analyst Larry Pursley noted had started to drop as the price of crude oil continued to fall.
Motors, we're seeing in August, September, prices come down, and then it was a shock. Even I looked at it and said, what the heck? How come they went back up?
But Pursley has an answer for that, too. Alaska may produce oil, but only a very small percentage of it is refined into gasoline here. Most is barged to refineries on the West Coast, then shipped back to Alaska. And a lot of those West Coast refineries have very recently shut down for temporary maintenance.
Refineries will schedule their maintenance to plan for winter blends, but then there was some unplanned maintenance that shut down some refineries in California. A big Phillips 66 refinery in Puget Sound closed for scheduled maintenance, and that took, just last week, that took about 2.5 million gallons a day of gasoline off the market.
Pursley says the entire West Coast is seeing sky-high prices that should go down as soon as refineries come back online, hopefully in the next week or so. In the meantime, he does have some advice for drivers.
If you don't have to fill up your tank, wait, it'll come back down, but it's going to come back down dimes, not dollars.
Lauren Maxwell, Alaska's News Source.
Wow. All right, the Alaska Community Foundation says more than 2,400 people, small businesses, foundations, and organizations have helped raise more than $1 million to help recovery efforts in Western Alaska. The foundation says some of that money is already on its way to those who need it. Christina Fenner with the Alaska Community Foundation says this week the foundation is giving out the first $500,000, and some of it went out this morning.
We talked to local leaders that had boots on the ground, who had seen what was happening and could really tell us where that money could go.
Some of that money is going to Chivak and Hooper Bay. She says the foundation will be doing a formal grant process in November, but they wanted to get some of the funds out immediately. Maria, great to see that generosity from our fellow Alaskans.
Big help to get started with that, but much repair is needed.
All right, let's turn to the weather situation right now. Take a live view across Anchorage this evening. Kind of cloudy out there.
Yeah, but it still looks really pretty, doesn't it? I mean, you know, we're bracing ourselves for more of the white stuff. You can see it up there on Mount Susitna already. Mm-hmm. And while we're seeing some of those clouds locally, Melissa says Western Alaska needs to prepare for even more wind and flooding. Melissa, oh my gosh.
It's hard to have any storm after the storm they had, of course, with the remnants there of Typhoon Mirabok. But that's the reality of fall in Western Alaska as they get those fall storms. Anyone that lives there knows to prepare for that. I'll show you that here in just a moment. But again, locally, we have a little bit of cloud cover. Temperature-wise, though, rather mild, sitting at 50 degrees. While we have no rain here locally or in the valley, we are seeing quite a bit of rain further to our south. An area of low pressure is going to bring more rain to the Gulf Coast and down into southeast here over the next 24 hours. In behind that, a lot of warm air, and that's going to affect our temperatures here in the coming days in south central. But in western Alaska, a storm that is currently in Russia is going to bring another round of high winds and coastal flooding once we get into late Wednesday, continuing through Thursday, Friday, and in some locations, you'll be dealing with a high surf all the way through Saturday. So again, that storm is about 24 hours from now. More details on that a little bit later in the newscast. But in South Central, all you need to be prepared for is the heat. Temperatures warming close to record levels. We're going to see upper 50s near Anchorage tomorrow and Thursday, with Scylla, the Valley, headed back to the 60s. We'll also see those upper 50s in Seward and Juneau, even despite the rain. And I'll have more details on how long that heat sticks around, and of course, that Western Alaskan forecast here in a few minutes.
All right, we'll see you then. Thank you, Melissa. Alaska law enforcement agencies say they seized more than 2.5 million doses of illicit fentanyl and other illegal drugs during a focused enforcement initiative this summer. The Department of Public Safety says more than 22,000 grams each of heroin and meth were also seized, along with 13,000 grams of cocaine.
We have an illicit drug problem in Alaska. More and more are coming in, but the increased focus on seizures, protecting our borders that law enforcement are doing is working.
DPS says the period from May 1st to September 30th of this year was one of the highest periods of drug seizures in the state.
A clarification now to a story reported last night about the 15th inmate death this year in Alaska prisons. Now, we said last night that death tied the record for most deaths in DOC custody in a single year. We do want to clarify that 15 deaths ties the highest number during the past decade. The State Department of Corrections says it is still checking its records, but there were 16 inmate deaths back in 2002. Still ahead tonight, the death toll is climbing in Florida.
As searchers are looking for those who didn't survive Hurricane Ian, the storm's effects are still being felt.
You went to your secret hiding place and found this. All drug use comes with risk. Before those risks become real, know that you can quit. For help with drug use, call 1-800-662-HELP for free and confidential information and treatment referral. Or go to samhsa.gov/know-the-risks.
You're watching Alaska's Good News Network.
Our lead story, Rams, and more Rams appearing every day in Anchorage. Not those Rams, these Rams.
We've got new Ram Warlock starting at just $46,275. New Tradesman starting at just $42,710. Ram is J.D. Power's #1 brand in new vehicle quality. And we've got new Grand Cherokee L at just $48,100. Come get yours at Anchorage Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. It's Ram Power Days and Jeep Adventure Days. See us on East 5th.
Our food, our homes, our jobs. Alaska's natural resources provide for us. I'm Mary Peltola.
We are a resource development state. We're a resource extraction state. We always have been. That's how we pay our bills, is through oil.
Alaskans know what we need and are fighting for it. And I'm running for Congress to make sure the federal government is working with us and not against us. That's why I approve this message.
You're watching Alaska's news source.
Well, here in Alaska and all across the nation, the midterm elections are just a few weeks away now. Maria spoke today with our Washington, D.C. Bureau correspondent, Peter Zampa, about a new series of special reports he's been working on.
Today, our D.C. Bureau is launching a segment called Listening to America that focuses on upcoming elections. Peter Zampa joins us now to talk about this segment. Peter, what are the goals of these segments?
Yeah, hi Maria. Good to be with you. The goal of this is pretty simple. It's to figure out what really is on voters' minds. You know, you hear all these salacious headlines in the lead up to elections on things that might not really matter to the average voter. But when you go around the country and you ask what's really going on in their minds, what's really going to drive them to the polls, you hear a lot of kitchen table issues, a lot of things that might hit their wallet, a lot of things that might hit their health, hit their housing, things like that are really going to gear them up to vote in these midterms.
And what are some of those top issues that you're seeing?
Yeah, so in our segment, we're looking at things like prescription drug prices, how they've gotten astronomically high for a lot of Americans. We're looking at housing prices. A lot of people haven't been able to afford a house in the last couple of years, and it just seems to get worse for a lot of people. We're also looking at childcare, a thing that a lot of folks can relate to. Do you go to work and hope that your company is going to pay for your children to be looked after all day, or do you have to you do it yourself, or find a friend, or find a family member who will do that? And also just inflation in general. We went to a food bank where they've noticed an uptick in customers because of how bad things have gotten at the grocery store, at the gas pump, just general everyday life things that have really gotten a lot more difficult over the last couple of years.
Now, in your first segment, you talked to a lady named Christina. We're actually going to run that story tonight at 6:30. Can you give us a little idea of what concerns her that other people share, those concerns?
Yeah, so this is the prescription drug price piece. Christine, this woman out of Las Vegas, she has a good paying job. She still isn't able to afford a house because she's paying something like $15,000 a year in prescription drug prices. Now, not everyone can relate to a number like that. But most of us either take prescription drugs or we know folks who are having to pay a decent amount of money for prescription drugs. And the toll it can take on some people. I mean, she's had to put certain things on hold as she watches her family and friends live quote unquote normal lives as they buy houses, as they take these luxurious vacations. She has to worry about shelling out these thousands of dollars each year for her prescription drugs, for her 12 prescriptions to help out with a number of ailments.
And that's an issue that affects Alaskans and people across the country, not just unique to Christine. So the Inflation Reduction Act, it had several prescription drug provisions in it. How and who will those help?
Yeah, no, this was the widespread Democratic piece of legislation that just passed with a number of climate provisions for Ukraine, other things in it. So it was this really widespread piece of legislation, but it did include some provisions on prescription drugs, mainly when it comes to Medicare and folks covered under Medicare, but it will allow the government to negotiate with some pharmaceutical companies to try to get prices lowered that way. It's going to have some caps on insulin if you're covered under Medicare. So things like that. It's not the silver bullet that a lot of people are hoping for. It's not the government intervention that a lot of people who are struggling to pay for their prescription drugs were hoping for. But if you ask Democrats, they say it is absolutely a step in the right direction, trying to solve this problem that both Republicans and Democrats for decades have been trying to solve.
And once again, we want to make sure that people know that Listening to America, your first segment, airs tonight on Alaska's News Source. Tonight at 6:30. Peter, thank you so much for joining us from the D.C. Bureau.
Thanks, Maria.
And if you'd like to follow Alaska's politics, give a listen to our podcast, Alaska's Political Pipeline. The newest episode examines the Senate and governor's races, as well as how out-of-state ad money is affecting the election. Rebecca Paulshin, our investigative producer, co-host. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. And coming up this evening, we highlight an exceptional athlete. Our sports team shows us a Chugiak runner who's on a winning streak.
And coming after the break, I'll have a look at that full 7-day forecast, which does include some ups and downs. But first, here are your daylight hours for today, October 4th. We're at 11 hours and 6 minutes of daylight with the sun setting just about an hour from now.
Some time with Modern Family. Come for the comedy.
I'm coming for you, Lily. Hey, let's go!
Stay for the love.
Thank you for being so vulnerable with me. I hate you.
Modern Family.
Weeknights at 6:30 on CBS 5.
Need motivation to work out?
Kelly Chewbacca got paid to exercise by taxpayers. Chewbacca charged us over $35,000 for hours she didn't work, but went running. A federal investigation found Chewbacca likely committed fraud.
The people investigating me decided that I'd committed felony fraud.
Kelly Chewbacca can't outrun her record of ripping off taxpayers.
Now I'm feeling chased down even more.
Senate Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
When Roe v. Wade was overturned, Mike Dunleavy celebrated, but he'll go even further, shredding Alaska's constitution to take away reproductive rights, even in cases of rape and incest, or to save a mother's life.
To stop Mike Dunleavy, we need Bill Walker. He'll fight to protect our personal privacy rights.
And I will veto any legislation that puts government between a woman and her doctor.
Because we should be making our own choices, not politicians.
This communication is paid for by Walker Dragons for Alaska.
In November, we'll vote on whether to hold a risky constitutional convention. A convention opens Alaska's entire constitution for unlimited change. Hunting and fishing, privacy rights, guns, access to public lands. We could lose big. No single issue is worth opening this Pandora's box. A convention is just too risky. This November, vote no on ballot measure 1.
This communication was paid for by No One Want to Defend Our Constitution. The top 3 contributors are 1630 Fund, NEA, Alaska PACE, and IBEW PAC.
For the millions suffering from long COVID, there is one urgent question. How long?
How long? How long?
Until we solve long COVID. The Solve Long COVID initiative is bringing people together to find answers now. Go to solvelongcovid.org to learn more.
You're watching Alaska's Weather Source.
Welcome back. High temperatures today back up to 50 degrees. Doesn't sound especially warm to be just barely at 50 degrees, but a normal high temperature this time of year is in the upper 40s. So anytime we see high temperatures back into low 50s, a little bonus heat there. Also, temperatures this time of year typically dip down into the mid 30s. 37 is a typical low temperature for us. But last night we did manage to stay in the low 40s. And we're going to see even warmer conditions here over the next couple of days. So again, normally once we move into October, we see those cooler temperatures moving in. We also still typically get rain this time of year, none in Anchorage just yet. We do have some showers in the area, but we have seen more than 1/10 of an inch in Kenai and more than an inch, in fact, more than 1.5 inches down in Kodiak. Very wet conditions down along the Gulf Coast, and we are seeing that storm also headed down into southeast. Check this out. I want to show you what's happening about halfway up in the atmosphere because this is really controlling our weather situation. So down here in the northern Pacific, we have this area of low pressure. You see that purple bullseye? That's what's controlling where the rain is going. As that pushes east, we'll see wetter conditions down into southeast over the coming days. But see these oranges, reds, and yellows that then squeeze in behind that storm into south central? That is much warmer air that's pushing in from the south, especially from the Pacific Northwest, where temperatures have been setting record highs in the upper 80s. We're going to get just a little bit of that heat, not 80s, but it will push many of us into the 60s here over the next couple of days. But you can see what's in behind that. A huge area of cold air is going to move in from the eastern side of Russia down across the Bering and will move across the state of Alaska once we get into Saturday, Sunday, into early next week. That's going to drop our temperatures likely at some of the lowest levels that we've seen so far this year. But before then, we have a pretty impressive front that's going to move in on the edge of that. It's a cold front bringing the cold air, and first that front is really going to pick up the wind along the west coast, and it's also going to create some coastal flooding as well. So you can see a number of warnings are in effect. Starting down south near Norton Sound, you have a high surf advisory. This does include Elam, Koyuk, and the rest of eastern Norton Sound. You want to be prepared for high water, 3 to 6 feet above normal high tide later this week. As you travel further north across Seward Peninsula and further west, it's the winds that you really want to be concerned for, including in Brevik, Michigan, also into Gamble, into Teller and Savunga. We're going to see wind gusts there up around 65 to 60 miles per hour. And that wind is also going to pick up that ocean surface. You have a coastal flood advisory in effect, including in Buckland and in Deering. That's all the way through Saturday. You want to be prepared for high water 4 to 5 feet above a normal high tide. Further north, those winds are going to be even stronger, and that high surf is also going to be even higher. Coastal flood warning and high wind warning is in effect. That includes in Point Lay, Wainwright, all the way up into Noatak, Red Dog Mine. You want to be prepared for wind gusts of 65 miles per hour, and that surf 5 to 8 feet above a normal high tide. So again, that is coming for you tomorrow night. You'll see that storm pushing in here from the west. Does arrive first there in Savunga and Gamble and then into Noma late Wednesday into early Thursday morning. And then we'll see that front pushing across the state. And yes, it eventually will bring rain into South Central. I expect that to happen here once we get into Friday and Saturday. Southeast, you'll see some scattered showers and highs will be in the upper 50s. Interior not having to deal with any of that. You are going to see calm conditions there into the low 50s. Now for South Central, again, we're going to see that roller coaster of temperatures, and I'll have that 7-day here in just a minute.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, in Florida, the search for Hurricane Ian survivors progresses.
At least 108 people are dead 6 days after the storm made landfall.
And about 420,000 people in Florida are still without power.
In hard-hit Fort Myers Beach, search and rescue teams are going door to door, making sure everyone who can be saved is.
That requires very extensive, tedious, very slow, methodical searching.
They're combing every structure, home, businesses, even vehicles. The Lee County Sheriff says the intensive search will last 3 or 4 more days. At least 55 people who didn't make it were found in this county.
And those numbers could go up. I pray to God again that they don't. But until we go through the rubble, until we see exactly what we have, we're not certain who's missing and what those numbers will be.
Those who did stay home during Ian now reflecting on what was lost and what could have been lost.
Big mistake. Big mistake.
Inland, Ian's effects still being felt. The St. Cloud community, just one, dealing with flooding from rising rivers.
Like a lot of water, but I never seen something like this in my life.
Back in Fort Myers Beach, for those now starting over, simple things bring the greatest joy.
Go in the house and turn the air on. The power's on.
Are you kidding me?
It just came on.
No, I'm happy. We can have margaritas today.
Oh, beautiful.
A light moment in a time of overwhelming darkness. Chris Pallone, NBC News, Fort Myers Beach, Florida.
Great to see those ladies keeping their spirits up.
Yeah, the simple things after such tragedy.
Absolutely. All right, back here at home, still ahead. Tops in her sport and routinely at the podium.
Our sports team introduces us to our athlete of the week.
That's right. 8 races, 8 wins for Trugax Campbell Peterson this year. But the one coming up is what she's been training her whole life for. Athlete of the week is next.
4 murders. We need to move cautiously on this.
What'd you find?
He's just getting started.
Let's get to work. We gotta find this guy fast.
Is it always going to be like this? Action, action, action.
This job's about finding our fugitive.
I have the full capacity of the Federal Bureau of Investigation behind me.
The FBI's new seasons tonight starting at 8/7 Central on CBS.
Come on, move. Of course, there aren't any spots. A few minutes won't hurt anybody. Thanks, Grandma.
Paralyzed Veterans of America works tirelessly every day to create a more accessible America. Let's leave the accessible spaces to the people who actually need them. Whatever the reason, excuses don't excuse. Join PVA and be part of the solution. Honor the spot.
When I'm working in D.C., I spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill. My goal is to speak with Alaska's lawmakers and bring you the facts about new legislation, the day's biggest discussions, or even controversial decisions. And when I'm in Alaska, I can report on how these national decisions directly impact everyone who calls the 49th state home. From natural resources to federal funding and economic drivers, Alaska has a lot on the line. You can turn to Alaska's news source and get coverage you can't find anywhere else in the state.
You're watching Alaska's Sports Source.
Well, toe the line against Chugiak's Campbell Peterson, and you're running for second place as she has yet to lose a race this year, with the most important one coming up this weekend. Let's meet our athlete of the week.
Your Region 4 varsity champion is...
It's Campbell Peterson's turn atop the podium.
She is a senior, and that is, of course, Campbell Peterson.
The Chugiak standout has won all 8 of the races she's competed in this year, including the region championship this past weekend by 28 seconds. A 4-time state champion with the Mustangs between track and cross country, the senior would trade all of her wins this year for that elusive individual cross country state title this weekend.
Last year I got second, which was, Robin is amazing. She's so nice, but that was a bummer for me because I was like, oh, I was so close.
And those who see her work ethic up close and personal are not surprised by her progression.
Campbell is very determined, I think, is the best way to think about it.
That girl will do anything. She'll push herself to the max to make sure she gets the workout she needs. And she encourages us, which I think is the most important part. Like, she supports her team, and we also put her back.
She's very diligent as far as her practices go. Just any little part of it, she's always right on and does it the way she, thinks it's going to work for her, and the way we tell her it's going to work for her.
Let's go, Campbell! Yeah!
Already one of the best on the ground, Peterson has set her lifelong goals a little higher.
Ever since I was little, I've wanted to be an aerospace engineer. So kind of working with satellites and lighter than aircraft and stuff like that. I've always wanted to work for a company like NASA or something.
With goals out of this world, Peterson is going to stay grounded and focus on her task here on Earth this weekend.
I think it's obvious. I want to take state.
State cross-country championships this Saturday at the Bartlett Trails. Chugiak looks to repeat as the girls' team champions, while Peterson hopes to capture that first Division I title.
Oh, we wish her the very best. Amazing young lady. Thank you, Jordan. Well, let's take another look outside to see what's happening out there on this Tuesday evening.
Yep, Sleeping Lady's got some more snow on her, and Melissa says expect a roller coaster of weather conditions. She's back with a detailed 7-day forecast next.
Buddy Bailey here. Can you remember the last time you got your money's worth of, anything? At Bailey's, you know that you can get the most out of your PFD thanks to our famous Buddy's price. Paired with our PFD special, you can even take 20% off that price on anything from mattresses to home office and 10% off of discounted items. You could even receive a free bucket cooler if you spend $3,500 or more. Make your dollars go the distance this PFD season with your local hometown furniture store.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around. And I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you didn't. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
You're watching Alaska's news source.
There's a Matsu Assembly meeting tonight where they're considering removing voting machines altogether.
If it passes, all votes would need to be hand counted. Here with more's Beth Verge, who's working on the late edition. Beth.
Well, Mike, Maria, last month, the Matsu Borough Assembly voted to add a hand count verification process to its precinct elections. So they wanted to add it, but that will go into effect this upcoming November. Tonight, though, members are considering an ordinance that would eliminate voting machines altogether and switch the election process to hand-counted ballots only. So those for it say this change would curb doubt over election fraud, but those against it say both machines and hand counts should be used to fortify the count. We'll bring you the full story and potentially a final vote from that meeting tonight at 10.
All right, Beth, we'll be watching. We vote for 6 more weeks of summer, but we're going to lose that election.
Wouldn't that be nice? It's going to kind of feel like it the next couple of days, just because of the temperature. You're a little skeptical. I can hear it in your voice.
Just a little.
But look at these temperatures. We're talking mid to upper 50s. Many areas in South Central will be in the low 60s.
35.
That's about 10 degrees, even more than 10 degrees above normal for this time of year. So that's Wednesday, Thursday. Friday and Saturday, that's when the rain's going to be here. And it's going to be a lot of rain. And then behind that storm is when those temperatures drop. That's why I'm calling it a roller coaster. Mid 40s during the day, mid 30s overnight. So
I'm looking at the low line.
yes.
Okay. More news on Channel 2 in just a moment.